friends, welcome back. I hope you have been liking the videos and the information shared with you. In the process, I have come up with another video today, and the video is totally going to be on working with Python list. Now, if you're familiar with the Python, then you must be knowing Python list is a very important data structure, one of the collection elements, and very popular because of its dynamic and memory optimization properties. So I'm not going to talk about the theoretical part about the list in this particular video. If you want to see them, you can go and refer to the blog link given here. I will also add this link in the description box. Let's see a quick revision on what a list is. So anywhere in Python, if you see a collection of items or a set of items placed separated by comma and enclosed within a square bracket, that is officially called a list. Okay, and a list, each element of the list can be either referred as a member of a list or an item of the list or an element of the list. So in this video, I'm going to use these terms interchangeably and you should not get confused. Now, so what are the things that I'm going to specifically discuss in this video? That would be the multiple ways Python supports list creation, and then all the valid operations that you can expect that a list object supports. So there could be a lot the other operations that you may want to perform with list, but list do not support that. So it is very important that you should be clear about this. If you really want to use Python resources efficiently, then you must be knowing these properties very well. So let's start with list creation. Just I want to add one more information. This video is going to be little lengthy. Do not mind, because since I'm going to discuss every valid operations and multiple ways that Python supports, it can go a little longer, but I would recommend you to watch till the end so that you do not miss any concept around list in Python. Let's start with the very first way of creating a list object. So whenever you have to arrange a set of values in a single variable, which is called list eventually, you can do that by placing those values separated by comma and enclosed within a square bracket. That forms a list. So if I run this cell, I have already written the codes to save or to cut this video in shorter time. But again, if you have any confusion during the video, you can always go back to the blog that I have shared to understand what that means. Although I will try to cover every minute details within the video. So now if you see when I ran this code, basically this object list1, that is called list in Python. And this is how the list of values will be displayed. Now this here, in this list, every element of the list is of int type. However, that may not be always true. A list element can be any Python supported data type. That means each element can be a mix of the type. One can be integer, other can be float, the third element can be a string type. Not just that, an element of a list can also be a list itself. That is called nested list. And an element of the list can be any other Python supported objects like tuple, dictionary, data frame, or series, or you can think of a set, anything. So anything which is supported by Python can be a member of a list. Hopefully that's clear. In this example, I just randomly took all the elements as an int type. In my second example, if you see, I have taken first two elements of int type, third elements of float type, and the last element of string type. Not to worry, still this forms a list object, and this is how the values are displayed. Now, if you see carefully, the first two elements remains to be of int type in list. The third element remains to be a float type, and the last element remains to be of string type. What that means? That means a list is an heterogeneous data structure in Python. What that again means is if you are passing an integer value to a list, it will retain to be integer value unless you modify it. So in memory, it's not going to do any sort of typecasting. Okay, so that's how list is popular for. You can mix different type of data and stored in a memory as a single variable. Now, how that could be an advantageous? So that could be in a way you can, let's say you want to store the details of an employee. Now, when I say details of an employee, let's say A, what are the details it can be? It can be name, it can be address, it can be salary, it can be age, it can be maybe number of experience, and it can also be something else, maybe performance ratings. Now, if you carefully understand the type of information will be stored in these attributes, they can be mixed. For example, name and address, that can be string type, whereas your age, that can be integer type, and your salary can be integer or float depending on how you save. Now, when it comes to rating, that could be again maybe string type or numeric type. It depends totally up to you. So the moral of the story is it can be a mix of data, and if you want to combine them all together, list can be a good option. Hopefully this answer is clear and you understand what could be a significance of a data structure supporting mixed type of elements to be stored by the same name. All right, let's see another example where you can create a list out of any other existing data type. So that can be done using something called list method or list function in Python. But before that, let's understand. If you see this, okay, so this here, what is the difference? We have a set of the integers separated by comma enclosed within round bracket. Okay, this is not a square bracket. So what is this? So this is called tuple in Python. Okay, this is not list, this is called tuple. Tuple is another data structure. If you want a video on that, just message me on the Dropbox chat box. I will come up with a detailed video on that, comparing list and tuple. But for timing, just assume there is something called tuple also in Python, and that looks like this. The values will be enclosed with the round bracket. And now, if I have to convert these elements to a list, how can I do that? It's very simple. You have to pass this particular object called tup inside the list function. So what will this do? It will convert this object as a list instead of tuple. So now this will give me a list. And you can see the return object is list here. Above it was called tuple. Okay, so to summarize this on creation of a list, you can create a list either by explicitly passing the values in the square bracket separated by comma, or you can call a list function on top of the existing data structure you have. Now, let's go ahead with the various operations that you can perform on a data which is stored as a list element. So as I was showing you, I have categorized the various operation into set of classes or as a case studies, and I'm going to discuss each one of the case study. Now, let's say you have created a list. Now, in that list, you want to add a new element. You want to basically expand it, right? So for example, let's say you have a list of employees. Okay, employee A, employee B, employee C, employee D, and so on. And tomorrow in your organization, a new employee comes in. So you have to add that employee also in this list, right? So how would you do that? So there are three methods provided by Python, okay, that you can take help of to add an element. But again, which one to be used specifically, that totally depends on what exactly you are trying to do, because they have some variations in their operation, and let's understand those differences, because understanding those differences are going to be very useful for you. Okay, so first I'm creating a blank list. Okay, what do you mean by blank list? So whenever you have a just a square bracket, but no elements inside it. That is called blank list. So first I'm creating a blank list. Now to this blank list, however, you can also have an existing list with some value, but just for simplicity and for the better understanding of the flow, I have created a blank list, a list with no prior element in it. Okay. Now to this list, I'm going to append a value of 4. So how do I do that? I do it with the help of append method. What is an append method and what do you mean by method? If you're not sure of method and function, methods are also functions. It's all that they are functions inside a class. Okay, so you must understand the concept of OOPS to understand the difference between method and function. If you don't know this, do not worry, just consider a method as a function, but it is called with a dot operator. Now, firstly, anytime if you are confused, what is the name of a particular method that works on a list and you don't remember it, the simple rule that you can follow is, let's say you here the list valid list object is my list, right? Write that object, then call dot and then press tab. Okay, I'll repeat. What you have to do is dot plus tab on your keyboard. If you do that, let me do once more, dot tab. It will list all the valid methods on a list. What do you mean by that? That says, okay, these are the only methods, or in other way, these are the only functions that are designed to work on a list object. Apart from these functions, if you call anything else on this list object, you may get an error. You will get an error, in fact. Okay, so these are the only valid methods that are designed to work on a list object, right? And if you see, one of them is called append. So we are going to, and there are a lot more, in fact. Okay, there is something clear, copy, count, extend, index, insert, pop, remove, reverse, and sort. I'm going to discuss each one of them. Okay, first starting with append. So what happens when you call list object dot append and then some value? Now here, this can be any value. Okay, right now randomly I took an integer value. If you ask me why 4, just that it came in my mind and I added 4. You can give anything else like 44, 400 or anything that you want. Okay, what is important is not the value but the type. So here I'm passing an int type inside an append, and once I do that and run this, you see what happens. In cell number 5, my list had no element. It was a blank list, but after the append operation, it has now one element with a value of int 4 and it is of int type. Okay, fine. Is that clear? Now next, in the same object, okay, I have not cleared the object, I have not refreshed the object, it remains to be same. In the same object, I am going ahead and appending one more value, and that is 4.6. It's a floating type. Now again, this value is just taken randomly. It can be anything else. Okay, I just appended on floating point value, and once I run it, you see, after 4.6 got appended. Likewise, so what do you see and what do you understand so far? So that means append, basically whatever you pass to it, adds it after the last element of the list, whichever is the last element of the existing element list. Out to the end, it appends one more value. That's why it's called append. Okay, now see, in the next example, I'm appending a list element. I'm not appending a single value like int or float, but rather a list with two elements, 400 and 500. Again, the values are taken randomly. What is important is I'm appending a list object to a list. How that will work? Let's see that. You see, it is appended as a list. Make sense? Okay, yes. So whenever you append a list to a list, it gets inserted as a list, basically appended as a list. No change. Simple rule. So the simple rule is whatever you append to a list, it just gets appended. Let's say another example, where I'm appending a word. called Python. What happens? It just got appended, that's all. So the rule follows here too, right? Okay, fine. So do you think any other combination we should try, or are we done with almost all combination that you can append? If you think there is any more combination that's not covered in this video and you are not sure how that works, you can again leave me a message in the uh, chat, in the comment, and I will share the solution of that with an explanation. All right. Okay. So that's about append. Hopefully you understood the working of append. So append just appends whatever you give it to it after the last element of the list. Right. Let's see now extend. What is an extend? So extend is another method that basically can be used to basically add a new element. Okay. But it works slightly different. How? So see, in this example first, yeah, I know I have already written error, but why it's error, let's understand it. If you see in case of append, when I gave an integer 4, it appended it well, right? It did not give any error if you remember. But when it comes to extend, if you do the same thing, it's going to give you an error as you see. And the error says int object is not iterable. What that means? It means your extend at any point of time takes not only an iterable object. Now, what is an iterable object? If you're wondering, uh, these are the special kind of objects in Python which can be used over which you can iterate. What do you mean by that? That means an iterable object can be further split into multiple elements. So what are the existing iterable objects? Any examples? Yes, we have. To give few examples of iterables, I can say your list is an iterable. List itself is an iterable object. Okay, your string is an iterable object. Whatever you have in string in Python, that's also an iterable. Why it is called iterable? Because a word, a string, let's say a word you have like Python, it can be further split into multiple letters like P, Y, T, H, O, M. So that is also an iterable. What are the other iterable objects? So we have tuple, right? You just saw an example, although I did not tell you the details about it. That's also an iterable object. Okay. Do we have something more other than this? Yes, we have set. Do we have anything else? Yes, we have some more, but at a ground level, these are the iterable objects. Okay, so these objects, over these objects, you can loop through. You can run a for loop. So now coming back to extend, extend at any point of time takes an iterable object. You cannot pass a basic data types like int, float to it because these are non-iterable. Okay, as per the error you see, int object is not iterable, and so will be true for a floating point number. So if I give a 4.5, that I get the same error. Okay, for float object. Hopefully this is clear. So I cannot do this single value, single int and float insertion to a list using extend. Extend is going to give me error. Then how can I do that? Okay, although there's an alternative, but again, we can argue why should we do that. But let's understand. If at all you want to, let's say, just add this 4.5 using extend, you are, let's say, very much stubborn to use extend and do it. How can you do that? You can do this way. Make it an iterable object. Okay, forcefully, of course. Explicitly, I made this 4.5 as an element of a list, and then if I call this extend, it worked. And how do you know it worked? Okay, let's understand. So I'm going to display my list after this operation, and you see 4.5 is already added. And if you notice one more thing, you don't have bracket here, that is square bracket, which was there in case of a list append. Now what is happening? Let's understand. Before that, I'm just going to remove this, okay, and run it again. Remove this out, and let's do this operation. So what I'm doing is I'm calling extend with a list with 2 elements. Okay, I hope you are following. So let's reiterate. So first I called append with an integer, it worked. Then I called append with a floating point, it did work. Then I called append with a list. So what happened? It appended a list itself, okay? It is still a list. Why? Because you see a square bracket. And then I called append with a word, or basically a string, and it just inserted that a string as it is. Nothing was done. So far you are clear, right? Now, so when I called an extend with an integer or floating point, it gave me error saying that float and int objects are not iterable. Then I'm calling extend with a list object with two elements, like I'm trying to do similar operation, but with an extend. I just changed the number differently so that you don't get confused, but you can do that with 400 and 500 also. When I run this, look at the output, that is important, okay? Your 400 and 500 got added not as a single element, but rather two elements of the list. As the name says, extend, the purpose of extend method is to extend, to grow the list, okay? That means if you have 5, 10 or 20 elements to add to your list, you don't have to call append 10 or 20 times. Rather, you make it a list and call with extend only one times. It's going to unpack each of the element and then insert as a separate elements in the existing list. Okay, once more, your append added to a list as a list itself, whereas your extend has extracted each element and then added to your list. Is that clear? Great. Let's see what happens in case of a string when you pass a string to an extend. Again, just a quick revision. In case of append, when you gave a string, it just inserted as a string, nothing else, appended as a string, okay, a single word. But in case of extend, if you see, it's splitting each of the letter, this whole word into multiple letters, and it's adding each of the letter as elements to the list. Make sense? Okay, so what that means, append just added one element, but when it comes to extend, it has added 6 elements. Okay, interesting. Yes, it is. So hopefully you are clear about the difference between extend and append and when to use what. So whenever you have an iterable objects to add or append to a list, you can easily use extend. But whenever you have a scalar values or an iterable object to not be extracted and added as a single element, you can use append. Make sense? Okay. Now let's see insert. So if you see in case of append and extend, the elements were always appended or added at the last position. But a lot of the times it's possible you want to add it to a specific position. Then how can you do that? Well, for that, Python has provided something called insert method. Insert takes not just value, but also the position at which you want to insert it. Okay, so the first argument of the insert is going to be a position. Insert, then you can think of position. So position is called index here, and then your value. So let's say if you have, so here in this example, I have given 4, index 4, and then ops, that's a word, but again, you can give anything else. What it will do is, okay, tell me at your index 4, which is your current element. So you can count 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4.5 is at index 4. After insert, what will happen? The oops will be inserted at the position 4. The oops will be inserted such that it will remain at index 4. So what that means? So will it be before 4.5 or after 4.5? It will be before 4.5. How do you know that? Okay, so that's as per document. Whatever I said so far, it's all as per document. It's not my words. So as per document, if you see, it inserts the object before index. Okay, so I am passing index and then object, yeah, value or object, either way you can call. It's called object in very general way because you can also pass a list at that position. Okay, right. So now have a look what happens. You see, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 at position 4. It's not actually position, it's index 4, position 5. We have a new word called oops. Now, if you, okay, can you guess now how is the behavior of insert? Is it similar to extend or is it similar to append? Yes, it's similar to append, not extend. Why? Because extend is going to extract each of the letters of a word and then insert. But when it comes to append, it is going to retain the word as a word and insert. So if you see, insert has also retained the word as a word itself. That means it's not extracting a word into a letters. So the behavior of insert is similar to that of append. The only difference is that it takes a position as well at which it has to insert, whereas append do not take the position. It's always inserting after the last element. Now, so to summarize this, if you have to say the similarities between append and extend, and append and insert, then what would that be? Think about it. Okay, so I'm stopping this video here itself because it became a little lengthy. The further operations I will bring in as a new video. Till then, have a happy learning and let me know if you have any other questions. Thank you.